Hello, I'm Dr. Anise Chagpar. Thank you so much for finding this video. In this video, we are going to talk all about sleep, how important it is, and what the health consequences are if you don't get enough of it. This has become a really hot topic, and I hope that this video will be helpful for you. So what do you say? Let's get started. So we know that sleep is incredibly important. For a long time, it has been something that has been ignored. Many of us always used to feel that there was some macho quality that we could get by saying that we really didn't need that much sleep or that we could do without sleep. Well, in this video, I'm going to tell you all about why sleep is so important. Ariana Huffington really put it well when she said, "There's practically no element of our lives that's not improved by getting adequate sleep." Well, health certainly was part of that. And when we think about the effects of poor sleep, it really comes down to a whole myriad of effects from increased obesity to worsened athletic and functional performance, worsened concentration and productivity. It affects our glucose metabolism and increases the risk of diabetes. There's a higher rate of depression and suicide, impaired immune function, and higher rates of inflammation, not to mention a whole host of other serious health consequences. So let's dig into each of these and talk a little bit more about the effects of sleep on all of these and what really is the science behind it. So, obesity is one of the things that certainly has been attributed to poor sleep. How does sleep do that? Well, it in part affects hormones that regulate appetite. So, poor sleep results in higher levels of ghrelin. And ghrelin is a hormone that stimulates our appetite. So, the less sleep you have, the more ghrelin you produce, the more appetite you have, the more you eat, the more obese you get. Poor sleep also reduces our leptin levels. Leptin is normally an appetite suppressant. So, less of an appetite suppressant means that we're more ravenous. Now, obesity, we have talked about, is not just about your body mass index. It's not just about weight. It's also about where you hold your weight. And there are some serious health consequences associated with visceral fat, that truncal obesity, having that fat around your internal organs. Well, it turns out that obesity is associated with visceral fat. And simply increasing your sleep from less than 6 hours to 7 to 8 hours reduces visceral fat gain by more than 25%. So just getting a little bit more sleep can alter where that fat is located. Now, the other thing about sleep and obesity is that this is a vicious cycle. So if you think about it, lack of sleep leads to obesity. Obesity is associated with sleep apnea. Sleep apnea leads to a lack of sleep. And so the cycle goes. Well, it's important to break this cycle somewhere. And one place to break it is by getting enough sleep. Now, sleep also has an impact on athletic and functional performance. So, longer sleep, there was a study that was done in athletes and specifically in basketball players that found that longer sleep actually resulted in higher speeds, more accuracy, better reaction times. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm not an athlete. I work at a sedentary job. Uh, I need to get all of this work done in the day. I don't really need that much sleep. Actually, you do. And we know that poor sleep can result in functional performance deficits as well. There was a study of 2,300 women that found that poor sleep resulted in slower walking, poorer grip strength, greater difficulty in performing independent activities. Now imagine, as you get older, you really need to keep up your functional performance. And so getting enough sleep is really important. And furthermore, it affects concentration and productivity. So we all know that lack of sleep really results in higher errors. We've seen this in medical interns. And in fact, there have been legal precedences that have really changed the way the healthcare system is arranged now, such that sleep is mandated for medical interns because we know that sleep is associated with better cognition and fewer errors. It is true, in case you've heard the rumor, it is true that lack of sleep leads to a level of intoxication that's similar to alcohol. So, if you're wondering why truck drivers need to take some time to pull over to the side of the road and get some sleep, it's exactly for this. It does impair your judgment. Adequate sleep, however, really improves problem solving skills, memory performance. I remember when I was in medical school, I often used to think, pulling an all nighter was the best way to go because at least I could cram as much information into my head as I possibly could. Well, it turns out that's not the best strategy. The best strategy is actually to get some sleep because it's during that sleep time that your brain is able to really compartmentalize what you've learned. So, sleep is really important for productivity as well. Now, we have spent a lot of time in a number of videos talking about diabetes and how this really is something that you don't want to get. In fact, blood sugar was one of the 5 key numbers that you needed to know. So, how does sleep affect glucose metabolism and diabetes? Well, it turns out that if you restrict people's sleep, you can adversely affect their blood sugar levels and you increase their insulin sensitivity. Remember, insulin sensitivity means that that's the hormone that deposits sugar as fat. We know that people who get poor sleep have an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. In fact, a study found that people who had slept less than 4 hours of sleep a night for 6 nights already showed symptoms of prediabetes. Now, the good news is if you have a week of actually sleeping an adequate amount, you can reverse those symptoms simply by getting more sleep. What about mental health issues? There has been a lot of talk recently about mental health, and it is so important. But again, here's a vicious cycle. We know that sleeping disorders, insomnia, and so on, cause an increased rate of depression. And people who have depression complain of poor sleep. Again, you have to break the cycle somewhere. We know that poor sleep leads to increased agitation, a reduced ability to recognize social cues and process emotional information. You're more likely to fly off the handle, for example, at the smallest thing, when really, if you would have had more sleep, you would have reacted much more productively. Perhaps most importantly, we know that poor sleep is associated with an increased risk of death by suicide. Whether this is correlated with mental health issues like depression is unclear, but we do know that sleep is so important to really helping us to maintain our emotional and mental health. What about immune function and inflammation? Something as simple as sleep really has a huge impact in terms of your immunity. So, lack of sleep results in less antibody production, which leads to higher infections. It leads to poor natural killer cell function, which again leads to higher viral infections and cancer. And increasing inflammatory cytokines leads to higher rates of heart attack and stroke, cardiovascular issues, as well as metabolic disorders and IBD. That's inflammatory bowel disease. So, for example, there was a study where they took people who had limited sleep versus people who had had adequate sleep. And they infected them with a simple cold virus. And so put these droplets into their noses. Well, guess what? The rate of getting a cold was 3 times as high in those people who did not have adequate sleep. 3 times. If you think about things like inflammatory bowel disease, if anyone out there has Crohn's disease, your risk of relapsing or having a flare-up of Crohn's disease is much higher if you don't have adequate sleep. When we think about cancer, and for those of you who know me, you know that I'm a breast cancer surgeon, we've done studies looking at circadian disruption and the fact that people who don't get enough sleep, because of the immune function and inflammation that plays into this cascade, may have higher rates of cancer as well. Indeed, there are a number of serious health concerns that come out of a lack of sleep. We've talked about inflammatory bowel disease and cancer, as well as diabetes, heart disease, stroke, even Alzheimer's. Simply by getting enough sleep, we can potentially reduce our risk of all of these conditions. So here's the next question. How much sleep do you need? And perhaps more importantly, what are the tips and tricks that can help you to get enough sleep? What do you do if you can't get to sleep? Or what do you do if you get up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep? Well, stay tuned because our next video is going to talk all about how much sleep you need and how to get it. So make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notify button so that you don't miss it. If you found this video helpful, please like and share it. Please leave me a comment in the box below. I look forward to reading all of your comments. And remember, please subscribe. It's free to subscribe, but it is not free when you don't take care of your health. I really hope that we form a community who is really dedicated to promoting our overall health and wellness and doing it in an evidence-based, scientific way. Until next time, I'm Dr. Anise Chagpar wishing you all a healthy and safe week.